The Prime Minister and the Secretary General have also both, of course, referred to the importance of education for broader developmental issues. And indeed, all these goals are interdependent. And at UNESCO, we also start, of course, from the concept that education is a right. So education is a right, but it also leads to so many other important aspects of development, individual, national, and global. This may seem obvious to us, because we are all, in one way or another, working in education. It is, I fear, not quite as obvious as we might hope for many others. It is indeed a worrying aspect, I think, of much of the current global debate about global priorities, such things as climate change, such things as health, such things as food prices, that the importance of education as part of the solution, of course not as the solution, but as part of the solution of all these issues, is a bit being ignored. And we see this, I think, even in the recent G8 statements out of Japan last week. Education was mentioned, but it certainly didn't play a central role. Many global tendencies, of course, affect education and education for all. I shan't go into all of these, just let me mention a couple. Why has so much progress been possible on primary education in particular in recent years? Well, in part, obviously, because of a major change of attitude, but in part also because of the advantages of sustained economic growth in Africa, in India, etc., this century compared to the much more difficult growth picture in the last 20 years of the last century. But just when things seem to be going well, then new problems arise. So let me just touch on one, the impact of food prices. This could have a very major consequence for education. Already we are seeing worrying things that even despite, of course, the abolition of school fees, primary school fees in so many countries, such as was indeed path-led by Uganda, nonetheless, the household costs of education remain relatively high for the poor. And if there comes to be the need for a trade-off between buying food and sending your children to school, or buying food and having access to health care, it is very worrying what might happen as a result of this rapid increase in food prices that the world has recently experienced. What are some of the major challenges currently facing education? Because, of course, at UNESCO we have to take a global overview. I will just touch on some of them, which are particularly relevant to your conference here this week. The fact that we have indeed significant success recently, rapid expansion at all levels of education. But this in itself is producing new challenges to which we have heard already reference. Success at the primary level is producing the new challenge of how to deal with the massive pressure for enrollment at the secondary level. Success at the primary level is also highlighting the issues concerning those who are still not enrolled or still not learning, particularly the most vulnerable and the most disadvantaged. Success at enrollment is, of course, also highlighting the importance now of quality. Linked to that is the question of the relevance of the content of education, something which we used to all talk about, which perhaps we don't talk about as much as we ought to now, particularly again under the influence of the EFA and MDG goals. But the content is obviously a key issue that we should talk about. I already mentioned, and others have mentioned, the literacy issue. The digital divide, of course, also has been mentioned. And the need now to have multiple paths to learning throughout life. We've heard reference to the progress made getting children into primary school. And here you can see this regionally. And you see particularly how that progress has been largely this century rather than during the 1990s. A very rapid acceleration. And it is very encouraging that the fastest increases are in the parts of the world where, which are in fact furthest from meeting the goals. But, as we have also heard, there remain a significant number of children not in primary school. This is just for primary school. So they're not quite the same numbers as we heard from the Secretary General, who was referring to primary and secondary school. But this room, if this room was a sort of metaphor for the primary school aged children in the world, the empty seats would be more or less right. Something like 10 or 12% of the children of that age group are not in school at all.